Welcome to Like a Ghost in a Shell podcast, a place where we like to think about the profound stuff and enjoy looking or finding ways to test and engineer the realities around us. This week we stick at the surface and share some pros and cons about, drum roll please, training versus exercise. We'll give a few pros and cons of each category and talk about the differences. After that, we'll pop some bottles of hell yeah, let's go get a champ, and enjoy the rest of our day. How does that sound? Good? Great. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage you today. We all know there are many tragic, crazy, saddening, and also interesting things that happen across the globe. To fight back, how would you do it? I'd say, break it down into smaller blocks and teach the people how to find their voice. That said, consider starting a podcast today, and who knows, maybe you could become the voice of the century? Dare to dream. Dare to make it come to life. Segment 1. The pros of exercise and training. Before we dive in, remember, the pros and cons for me may not be the same for you. It's just nice to get to hear someone else's perspective, other than my own. That said, we'll start with the pros of exercise. A few reasons for the pros of exercise and that come to mind would fall in the category of doctor-enforced or recommended, health conditions, mental conditions, bodily exemptions, pending the person, and abilities. Abilities to the extent that a person could be half paralyzed and half not. So, taking into consideration those kinds of points, we'll share some pros. To me, a pro to exercise would be something like recovery from an accident and the potential of that habit becoming a lifelong habit. Or exercise because of an older gentleman or woman's bodily health, keeping them active and the muscles moving. Perhaps, exercise just to stay active in a day, to keep your mental health surfing on a smooth wave of positive emotions. Although, every day isn't always sunshine and rainbows, nobody says that you can't try to make the best of it, right? So, to me, exercise is like a tool to keep me productive or active a few times a week. Sometimes just to do something for no real reason, and other times because I have a reason. Now, some reasons for pros of training would be training to become pro in sports, creative outlets, elite shenanigans, or training to improve a current skill set to use those new and old skill sets for competition. Or even, training to compete in bodybuilding, calisthenics, CrossFit, America's Next Top Ninja, etc. Training to the point that I expect to lay a foundation and continue building on it to become elite. The question we ask now is, how could this podcast help you better understand the possible dilemmas, mishaps, or delayed progress you may be having? Some possible answer could be, now that I understand the differences from the pros of exercise versus training, I can draw up my fitness roadmap a lot more clearer because I have a stronger idea what my reasons are behind what I'm doing. Segment 2. The cons of exercise versus training. From experience, I get bored fast at times. Therefore, staying productive keeps me lit. When I've tried exercise, I failed a lot. When I've gone training, I've wept more tears of joy than a man should do when accomplishing new PRs. So as an example, I would say that exercise for a 34-year-old, a working body, 10 toes and fingers, is not ideal for a person that likes to stay productive and gets bored easy. So, perhaps the cons of exercise could be that it's leading a person to boredom, keeps a person comfortable in the comfort zone, provides little to no progress if their plan of exercise doesn't consist of any intensities or food groups that result in bodily transformations, or a lack of confidence in oneself when they start to weigh out the differences. Some cons to training could be habitual dilemmas, higher risk of injury if sessions and moves aren't practiced correctly, overtraining causing one to lose motivation and inspiration, sometimes and from experience. Sometimes hard to find a partner to train at the intensities you're interested in. The next question we ask from this podcast is, if you were to start a new habit today, what would it be, and at the moment, why would you start it? Segment 3. Magnifico. Somewhere in your life's timeline, I know, you did something magnifico, aka magnificent. When was the last time you reminded yourself of it? Not other people. You write it down on a piece of paper, and melted because that magnifico moment was because of you. The mind and the brain have this brilliance. It's a wonderful reminder of letting you know all about your problems, your bad energy, your loony thoughts, and the list goes on. The last question we ask with this podcast is, when will you take hold of that brilliance, aka pessimist part of you, and like hitting a new PR, when will you use your magnifico moment to learn how to create more magnifico moments in your training sessions? The news channel has a saying, it's a perfect storm. If your mind and brain are using that brilliance to create the perfect storm, then perhaps start using your magnifico moment to overcome the brilliance.
Thanks for stopping by the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Should you please, we encourage you to donate to our podcast through Anchor.fm/likeagostinashell. Thank you for continued support.